is nice. I did allow about a week and a half for you to submit your assignments. If you did it before then, I mean, if you already did it, that's great. You still have time to submit it. The homework was, I have the quick check assignments and I have 2 case problems. One of the issues with the quick checks, though, it seems that some students handed in only one of the quick checks. There are 3 sections in the book itself, so I need the 3 sections to be handed in. So if you didn't hand them in yet, make sure that you hand them in. It's pretty much meant just to make sure that you understand what's happening. Obviously, you could use the book for all these parts of assignments, as well as in the future when you hand in the assignment. When we do I'm not expecting you to memorize. There's a lot of coding here as far as HTML and CSS, and if you need to use the book as a reference, I'm not expecting you to memorize all the information. It's a lot of information, and typically web programmers and people who design pages use the internet all the time, or they use resources. So I'm not expecting you to memorize all the information, but I am expecting you to understand the concepts behind them. So let me quickly go over some of these, the quick check from section 1.1. The first one, right? What is markup? What is a markup language? And I have the answers here. A markup language is a language that describes the content and structure of the document by identifying or tagging different elements in the document. And this should be clear as we go through the specific chapter, or even the first chapter. We saw that there are each element inside of an HTML document will have some type of tag that's associated with it, and that tag is going to, the markup language is what will go and determine what to do with that information. Next is, what is XHTML, and how does XHTML differ from the HTML language itself? So XHTML is a version of HTML that enforces strict compliance with its syntax rules. One of the reasons why it was enforced is because with the internet growing and HTML pages growing and the newest versions of HTML and CSS, it's important that it's if all the rules are followed, and if not, then there's some type of I don't say consequence, but something it has to, by default, has to happen. So with XHTML, that's how it differs from the HTML language. Again, if you have any questions, if anybody has questions, you can let me know on these sections. Okay, what is WC3 and what WG? And the answer is basically the W3C is a worldwide consortium. It's basically a group of designers that got together to set standards. You could read, if you want to go through the actual paragraph, you can. They set standards on how HTML should be used, and the WG or Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group is a group that is formed to develop a rival version of XHTML 2.0 called HTML5, and we'll get more into that as we get into later sections of this book. What is incorrect about the following code? Suggest a possible revision of the code to correct it. So we see here that there's a P tag and a strong, and curbside now deli delivers, and we have the closing P tag. Remember, all closing tags are made with a /, and it works as like you would think. If there's a first a P and then there's a strong, then the opposite should be true when you closing tags. First there should be a strong, and then there should be a P tag. So the tags work in reverse order as they're put in. That's exactly what we have over here, right? So did I skip a question? What is doc type? What is the doc type for an HTML document? I skipped that by accident. So a doc type or document declaration type is a statement that indicates the HTML language which the HTML document is written, and it is used by validators to test for compliance with HTML standards and so on. And often it's going to make a difference what type of language you're programming in as well. If you're going to be using other languages like Hebrew or Chinese or something, you're going to have to go and change your doc type. Well, the doc type will remain the same, but we'll see later on your HTML has to be a little bit different. All right, let me move on. We have provide code for markup to mark curbside employment opportunities as a document title. That's a one-liner, right? We have over here, right? Just this is the title itself. It's going to be inside of the title tags. We continue on here. What number I'm up to? I'm up to 7. Provide code of basically to adding the keyword food truck, North Carolina, and so on. So that's just a tag that we're going to go and put in. We're going to use the meta tag name. We're going to use meta, and we're going to have the name, keywords, content, and food truck, and we're going to add it in the meta tag there. Meta tags are used for a variety of reasons, one of which is used by search engines in order to go and to document your code inside of your document, inside of your HTML page. Number 8, we have provide code to tell the browser that the character encoding is 16 used in the document. That's what I was mentioning before. It depends on what type of language you're going to have, and this is how you do it. You would do the meta tag. The character set is going to be equal to UTF-16. And the last one for this section is provide code to add the comment. This is the comment we want to go and add. So the codes, if you have a comment, which won't show up in the actual page itself, but it's still going to be able to, if someone knows how to read the source code, which I'll show you that later on today, that's part of this section, it still is available to see, meaning don't like put anything secure inside of a comment. But the way that it's, the way that we go and code it is an angle bracket, exclamation point, 2 hyphens, and then you end it with the 2 hyphens and then the other angle bracket, and that will be hidden from the actual HTML page itself. All right, so that was section 1, and we have section 2. Provide code to mark the text, basically this heading with a second level of importance. So I think I have that here, yeah. So here we have H2, so it's a header 2, and we have the gourmet Thai cooking. And the H2 tag here is is the main thing that we're referring to. And we're going to see today how to go and mark up with CSS the different headers, H1, H2, and so on. But it's important to know that that whatever is inside of these 2 tags will take on the CSS, as we'll speak about today, of that specific header. What element should you use to mark page content as a sidebar? So the homework assignment had a sidebar, and basically it's this aside element, and it's actually labeled aside. We'll see that's the actual tag that's being used. And I'll go through it really briefly after the end of this. I'll go through the solution to the first problem, the first HTML document that you had to make. I'll quickly go through to point out a few elements, and some things that some students got wrong. I'll point those out as well. 3, what is the div element, and why will you often encounter it in pre-HTML code? So the div element is used to mark a division and was a major structural element prior to the introduction of sectioning and so in HTML5. Many programmers still use div. I use it all the time because it still will work in all browsers. HTML5 will go and recognize it, but it is a major part of older code, and you should be aware that of what it is and what it's used for. All right, what element would you use to indicate a change of topic within a section? So you would use the HR element. Again, I'm not expecting everybody to remember all these, but just know that they exist. And if you see them in an HTML page, you should be aware of more or less what they mean. I'm not expecting you to memorize all the different tags, but you should, if you've seen HR, you should be aware of what it means. All right. Provide the code to mark the text daily special and emphasize text. So basically the EM here is what we're looking for in order to go into emphasize it. And we could, if we had time, I just don't have time to, with all the sections to go and put this into a actual web page, but you could quickly go and create any of these tags, you're able to go and put them into a text document, and when they're within the text document, you're able to go and test what the actual tag is going to do. Okay, number 6, provide the code to mark the text, and we have H2SO4 with subscripts. So we use the sub element for that. We have H, and then we have sub, and we close the sub, SO, and then we have a sub 4. So those are going to come with it as a subscript. Then we have provide the code to link the web page to the CSS file mystyles.css. This is a very important one because all of our documents will probably have inside of it, they'll probably all have some type of CSS file associated with it. So we get used to this one, and this is just the link. It's going to be inside of the header. It's going to be an href, a reference page, which is going to be equal to mystyle.css, which is the actual file that you're going to create. And what type is it? It's a style sheet, and it's a text CSS. So this is over here is how you go and embed that. And again, it's very important, and most of your documents will go and contain that. Okay, then we have next we have provide the expression to insert an M- into a web page using the character code, and this is the code we want to put in. Again, I'm not expecting you to memorize all of them, but when you do need a code, I think I did an example last time in class, in order to go and put in some spaces, you would use a code similar to this, but basically it's the ampersand and the pound sign, and then the actual code itself followed by a semicolon. That's how you go and put it in. And then we have the next question, provide the code to insert an inline image using the source file, and this is the file we want to go and put in, and the alternative text. So a few things with this. First of all, notice it's saying an inline. So this is going to be actual, an inline means it's going to, wherever we put it in, it's going to exist within that specific location. And it has alternative text associated with it as well. So here we have an image tag. IMG stands for image. SRC is the source. And so what is the actual image itself? It's a PNG file. It's just a graphic file. Basically, PNG files are very good for the internet because they're smaller, and they can embed. You could also put in, along with it, some, you could make it transparent. We'll talk about that later on in the course. And here's the AW logo. And in case it does not show up in the browser, or if you're looking on a browser that cannot display images, or if there's an issue, you would have the alternative text as art world. Be aware also that, and we'll talk about this hopefully later on also, that this AW logo file must be in the same folder as your actual HTML document is that's calling it. If it's in a different folder, then you have to you have to teach instead of being just by itself, by SRC and then open quote, the file might have to go up a folder or down a folder, or give it a specific location where this PNG file is. Otherwise, it's not going to show up. All right, so that's 1.2 quick check. And the last quick check, all right? And these are also, I've posted all these solutions to Moodle as well. So if you didn't catch them here, you could take a look at Moodle and go over it yourself. I just want to make sure that I hit them all. And like I said, some students did not they only handed in section 1.1. I was kind of expecting everybody to send in 1.2 and 1.3 as well. Provide the code to mark the unordered list containing the items, Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions. So an unordered list is basically a list of elements that should be in a list format. And so this is UL, it makes a list, unordered list. And then this LI specifically, it will show the element of that list. So in each one will delineate which specific list item it is. So you have to have an open and close tag for each one. So we have LI and a closed LI, we have Packers, Vikings, and that code would be inserted in there as an actual list itself. Now they want an ordered list, I guess, taking from provide the code to mark the following list of the top 5 most popular movies, ranked, and so on, right? So then it's OL, which is going to be an ordered list, start 5 descending. And so the main difference here is the OL, which stands for an ordered list. And so it's going to order them in descending order. We have describe the 3 HTML elements used in a description list, right? So the description list is grouped by the DL element. The terms are marked with the DT element, and the description associated with each term is marked by the DD element. And we really need, I think the book had some examples to demonstrate that. Using the folder structure, provide the code to create a navigation list for the following list items. And we have home, fact, contact, all those, right? So this is a navigation list, right? So it's the word nav followed by all a list, an UL, which is going to form a list, and LI is going to be a specific one. And inside of each specific one, we have an HTML reference. It's an A tag. It's an anchor, which is going to have an href that's going to reference, in this case, it's going to be index.home. So this line will be underlined, and it should have, when you click on it, it's going to go to index.html. And you're not limited to your own computer. If you put in http:// www, and then, I don't know, google.com, whatever, then you would actually go, assuming you have internet, it would go to that location. And again, these are all relative to where the current page is. Like if your index does not exist within that same page, and it's going to have difficulty clicking the home button, it won't go, it'll give you, I don't know where this location is. So these HTML files have to be in the same folder as your home, which is very common, but often in larger websites, you might have different files, different links, all different parts of your structure of the actual source of the website that you might be creating. All right, the last couple ones here. All right, using number 5. Using the folder structure shown in the figure 1.4, provide the relative path going from the about to the, this is what I was talking about before, to the catering. So the relative path would be the ... catering. And then, so what does this mean? We're going up. The ... always means you're going up a level. So you're going to be going up a level, and then within that level, you're going to be going into the folder catering, and then accessing or referencing this other HTML page. So that's what I was mentioning before, that if you're not in the same, if the file's not in the same folder, then you have to teach or tell the link where exactly you want to go, and the ... / always indicates you're going up a level. So if you wanted to go up 2 levels, you could do ... / So and if you use, there's other tricks you could also use depending on the browser, depending on what your website is constructed as. If you're using WordPress or some other techniques you could use, but this is the standard one that will work in all cases. All right, number 6, provide, did I just do that one? That was number, hold on, right, number 6. Provide the URL pointing to the element in the glossary, HTML5 with the ID C terms. So that's what this is going to be. It's the # your glossary.html, and the # C terms will go and index or put you at that specific location. Provide the URL to access the website at the address, and we have the example here, right? So the answer to that one is, like I said before, https:// and you have the URL to that location. And you have to make sure actually that it does contain an S, because some sites don't have, S is for security, like that means it's a secure site. So you want to make sure first that it does have an S at the end before you would go and you would use that example. Number 8, last 2 here. I provide the URL for an email link to a specific address, right? So you have mail to, and you have this, then this would be the mail, and then automatically when you would click this, it would open up whatever current mail program the user has on their computer. It would open up as if you're going to send a new letter, along with a subject associated with it, and with a subject would be FYI, and the mail to would be going to this specific person. And finally, we have provide the URL for a telephone link to the US phone number, and this is the phone number. And so that would be just, this is how you would go and do that. All right, so that's that was the quick check assignments. It's basically meant to make sure that the students are, everyone's understanding what's happening, and does make you go a little bit more in depth inside of the book to try to answer some of the problems. All right, I wanted now to go over, I'm going to go over the first assignment. I'm just going to go through the HTML document itself. Let me set that up for you. Hold on a second. Let me set that up for you. Give me one moment, please. Don't know if I opened it yet. Hold on. So the first homework assignment, it's case 1, and I'm just going to open up the actual CSS, I mean the HTML for it, which is the index. Give me a second here. And let me open up my, like I said, I'm using Notepad++. You could use whichever. I was talking to a student. You don't have to use Notepad++. You could use another one if you wanted to. I just happen to be using Notepad++ because I'm familiar with it. And it's a pretty common one to go and use. So I'm going to open it up. I changed my colors to this specific color. All right, there we go. So here is the solution to this specific problem. Let me actually go through it with viewing the actual document itself, so I could show you hand in hand what each part is doing. So here is, I'm bringing to view the actual document itself. Assuming that you can see this, right? Most people got this, we entered in and got it correct. A couple of them, the images were off or in the wrong location. And it's going to depend, actually. Usually it's depending on which, I'm right now, this is my Firefox is my default browser. So depending on which browser you go and use, it's going to, let me just open up a new thing here. Let me open up a new window. Hold on one second here. Let me go back to this one over here so we have a nice blank window here. All right. Okay. So sometimes when if you create, let's say, you should always, when you create a web page, you should always check it out in all browsers. You should check it out in Chrome and Firefox and Internet Explorer and the Mac, and you should also and so on. So anyway, this is, let's take a quick look how it looks here. All right. So this, let me get this smaller here. Okay, fine. So pretty much doc type, we have HTML, we have our head file here. This is the comment, right? Then we have our meta tags, characters at UTF-8. We have our title, Jed's tree care, right? And we see that over here, Jed's tree care. It's inside of the tab. Then we have, the way that I'm switching back and forth, students often ask me how I switch back and forth between the different windows, is I do Alt-Tab. Alt-Tab is a nice shortcut. You should get used to that. It lets you go, you could see all the different things that are opened or not opened. So, and Shift Alt-Tab brings you forwards and Shift Alt-Tab brings you backwards. So those are the different ways that you're able to, that's how I navigate around, and I find it very convenient. Then we have a link. This is the link we're talking about before. There's 2 style sheets based with this one. We have this base CSS, and we have the layout.css. We're going to talk a lot more about this today. And they're both style sheets, CSS, and those are in the same folder, right? If I would go and change, I mean, I'll do that for you right now, just to, as an example. I'm hitting Windows E on my computer just to show you an example really fast. I don't know where all these files are. Where are these files? They're actually, hold on, let me just put all this. Okay, fine, 1 second. I'm going to go to my C drive here. C drive, I'm going to go to, you don't have to, give me a second here. I just want to give you a quick example. I'll navigate off the screen here so it doesn't get too busy on the screen. Hold on 1 second. You can only prep so much for the class. Okay, I'm the our data, and give me 1 moment. Go to the course. This one. Fine, and good. So let's go back here for a second, right? So I'm going to go to, this is the specific one, and this is the case one, right? So all these files are, these are the files that we need to actually run this. If I would change the name of any one of these, obviously it's not going to work, right? If I, they're referencing over here, they're referencing the base.css, right? So if I would change the word base.css here to something else, if I would rename it, right? I'll just do it for fun, right? I'll rename it. I'll call it base one. Well, base one, right? Base one. Okay. So now when I try to run this, if I go back to my browser here and I refresh it, well, not a whole lot happened because bad example, because that didn't really rely on a whole lot. Let me just, but let me, I'll change the other one instead. Hold on. Yes. 1 second. Rename. Let me just change it back. Call it base.css. I could change, I don't know, whatever. You get the point though. I don't want to spend so much time on changing it, but if I would change the specific, it did make a little bit of difference. You can see a change there. Anyway, and it has to be in the same folder. If I would take this and I would move it a folder up or a folder down, right, in the hierarchy of my folder system, that would make a difference as well, unless I reference exactly where it is. All right, anyway, so this is how the page is supposed to look. We see some nice things here. See a little site tag here and some links over there. Basically everything the book talked about. We talk about, this is all inside the head, right? Inside of the header file, starting here, and it starts there and goes to there. We have our header itself. The header inside of it has a few navigations, right? These are the links that it has. It has the home here and the services over there. And this is another part of the actual assignment itself where you're supposed to go and link to it. That was the second part of the assignment. Then we have aside, right? That's just going to be the side. Usually aside is used for parts of an element, parts of a page are going to be separate from the rest. And so we see the start tag here and we see the close tag over there, right? Double clicking it gives you the ability to see the matching tag along with it. We have an image. This is the image. It's a PNG image. It's going to be at the top. This is an inline image. And the alternative text is comments for it. We have a block quote, right? Block quote is a specific type of quote that's being used inside of the, it has a specific pre-made format for itself. And then we have a paragraph tag here and a close paragraph. And it has the specific, I hired Jeds to remove an old sugar maple and so on. Yeah. Then we have the site tag, which is going to give us this over here, right? And then there have a few of them, another block quote and a closed block quote, and each of these things I was following along. I tried to do this myself as far as the book was explained to do, and it really was step by step. I had to go in and see where the chapter explained a specific part, but overall it was able to follow along. And again, if you have any questions on specific parts, you should let me know. Then we have the main article itself. There is over here. Start off with the header of it, which is going to be an image, which is this larger image over here. Sometimes it makes a difference, depends what browser you're on. Sometimes it makes a difference if something is uppercase or lowercase. Let's just see if it makes a difference with this. I'm changing it to uppercase P. I'm saving it by hitting Control S. Going back to my document, and I'm hitting Control R. In this case, it didn't make a difference. I guess Firefox was smart enough to know a difference. It also depends on the server you're on. So depending on how you set up, and if we have time in the class, we could talk about setting up a server. And so it depends on how you set the server up, if it's going to recognize uppercases and lowercases. It's good. I try in general to do everything lowercase, because that way I don't get confused what's uppercase, what's lowercase. And remember also that this is a underscore here instead of you can't put a space in. If you put a space in, it's just going to mess everything up, because it's because it doesn't recognize spaces. If I would put this in, right, I would just get, I'm probably going to miss that whole picture up there. We see the alt text there though, but the actual picture itself is gone. All right, so that's under the header. And then we have paragraph tags, more paragraph tags, right? That takes care of this one, this first one, and the second one. Refresh it here. Oh, I got to save it first and refresh it. And those are 2 paragraph tags. Then we do a strong, and that gives us this bold looking here. We could also do bold, but and then we put a break in. BR stands for break, and we have the address with a break in between each one of those. And then we have the href for the mail to, and we have the href for the phone number. That's why those are underlined. And we're going to see today how to actually go and format those in a different way. And then we close the article, close the body, close the HTML, and that's it. So that's the first assignment. I'm not going to go over the second one. If you have questions on it, you could let me know, and I'll give you a push either by showing you what you got wrong, or I might go and actually send you the solution file to give you so you could compare yourself with how it actually should be looking. All right. So okay, hold on one second. So here actually is the second assignment. This is how it's supposed to look. A lot of images. I noticed a few of the assignments that I saw were missing some of the images, and I wasn't sure if it was because I'm not sure. I mean, the actual code was missing the images. I wasn't sure at what point that happens. Also, something else I wanted to point out is that there's a difference between. I'm not sure. So a couple of assignments came in that notice how my double quotation mark here looks like this, right? It looks like it's a double quotation mark. I don't even know how. Often with a word processor, if I would, let's see, I don't know if I have Word open on another. I don't want to open up Word right now, but often Word or other programs will make a quotation mark in a different. They'll be more slanted. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but they won't be the typical ASCII up and down quotation mark. You have to make sure that you use standard quotation marks. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue with the browser does not know what is the literal string, what is part of the whole, where it ends, where it begins. So just always make sure to use the quotation mark, the standard quotation mark, just like that. All right, so let me quickly go through the second one here, right? Again, this is how it's supposed to look, right? Nice page here. All right, these are good. Also, this is save these files because these are nice files to hold on to if you ever want to create a page yourself, some type of page. You could just put in dummy text or the text that you specifically want, and kind of use this as a template. The ones that exist already as a template. There are also a lot of places on the internet to get template files, and now that you understand codes, you'll be able to manipulate them as you want. Anyway, so we have the character set. And we have they asked to put keywords in for this one. So this is the keywords, the meta tag keywords, and we have this is picked up by browsers. It's picked up mainly by browsers. I mean by like Google search bots and stuff. We have the title, which as I said shows up over there. And we have these two different CSS files, right? They're in the same location. That's the end of the head. We open up the body, have the header. Right, so when the header, this is the first image that's being in the header itself. If I would change it, let me just change it really fast. I'm making my file a little bigger here so I can see better. The way that I make it bigger and smaller is hit the control button and mouse up and the wheel up and down makes it bigger and smaller. So I'm going to put in that's not a good example. PNG 1 like this, logo 1, and you can see what exactly disappears. I mean, obviously this should disappear over there, right? I'm going to refresh it and we see it's gone. It does say math string because that's the alternative text, but it can't find the file itself because there is no such thing as MS logo 1. It has to be MS logo. So that's over there. And the way that I check your work usually is I take your files that you sent to me through Moodle, and then I copy them into the folder that has the proper text overriding the real one. And I just check it out, and I can see pretty quick if it's matches or not. And if it doesn't match, then I do a search for why it doesn't match. And if it's an easy fix, I'll just tell you what the problem is. Otherwise, I'll say it doesn't match and try it again. All right, so this back. All right, then we have the article itself. Right, this is the article. The article happens to have a header, which is over here. Right, this is showing up over there. Then we have the next image, which is going to be this image over there. Right, you kind of want to do it. Always works top left to right. Is usually how it works. So this H1 is going to be at the top here. We're still on the left side, so it's going to put the image over there. And then we have this text over here is the start of a paragraph. And within this paragraph, we have a strong, right? So here's the start. Here is the paragraph is beginning here, and we have the strong. And this is actually a good time to introduce what's going to be happening in the chapter itself. So let me show you. I'm going to show you in Chrome because Chrome will give us, hold on, let me get you a new window here. I might as well start talking about this chapter as well. So give me 1 minute, please. I'm going to open up a new, hold on, let me clear my screen here. Okay, whatever, doesn't matter. Here, I'm going to, how do I do this? I know what to do. Let me open up here. I'm going to go to run. I'm going to launch it in Chrome. That'll work. Good. And I'm going to take this and bring it into the window there. So this is the same page. This is the same thing we saw before. And why did I do that? Because I want to show you, I'm right-clicking my mouse, and I'm going to go to Inspect. This is a nice feature that all web developers have to know about. And this Inspect gives you, you have a whole lot of options here. We're just going to talk about the Inspect, and the book does talk about this. I'm kind of jumping ahead in the lecture notes. This, when I inspect a specific here, we were talking about over here, right? So I'm going to click this, I'm going to right-click it, I'm going to go to inspect this specific part, and we see the actual code itself, all the code for this part. We see that this is inside of a P tag, and inside of the P tag, there's a strong tag. So all the code that's in here, we could inspect it inside of this inspector. Right, this works inside of Firefox. I'm no one doing Chrome because the book talks about Chrome. That's the example they give. And you could actually see, in addition, as we talk more about styles, you could see all the styles that are used in that specific part of the page. Like if I would go to, I don't know, let's go back over here. I'm going to inspect this, and we could see the styles that are used. It has all the different styles, the font that was used. We're going to talk about fonts today. The sizes, the page coloring, all the different parts of this specific paragraph and the whole page, in essence, you're able to go and see all the codes behind it. Go to any web page and you'll see this is a great feature. You're able to really, if you like a specific font on a specific web page, go to it and see exactly what they use, and you could use that also, assuming that it's a free font. And if you like the way that a web page is being rendered, you could go and inspect it and see exactly how it's being rendered. What I wanted to mention before also, though, was the comments, that if I wanted to, in the same regard, if I went over here and I did, I could see the comments. I'm not as familiar with Chrome because I usually use in Firefox. But I could, it's up here, I think. Where is it? Anyway, you could see the comments if you wanted to. I don't want to look for where exactly you could see the comments. You should be able to see them up here, actually. Yeah, they're there. So these are the comments you could actually view. So don't think that your comments are actually hidden from the user. They will see comments. Don't put any passwords or anything that you don't want people to view, because they are here. You just don't see them in the rendering of the page itself. So this is a nice feature to have, and you're able to really inspect elements of a web page and use it however you want to use it. If you want to see, I'll often find a mistake. You could change these also. You could change, you know, if I want to change a font color, right? Let's see, where is this? 1 second. Let's see, hold on. If I want here, I'll go over here and I'm going to inspect this elements over there. And if you want to see how, let's say I want to experiment how it looks in the color black, right? So I could click this over here and I could literally change the color of it. Let's see if I usually able to double click it and give the, well, that would turn the color off. Let's see if I could right click it. No, well, I know you should be able to click it and to change the color to a different color. You can manually put it in if you want to, because I could manually. You could change the color of the text to see how it's going to go and look. Let's see, but hold on a second. Let's do. I don't remember all the colors offhand. I'll do. You see how the text is being altered based on the specific hex code that I'm putting in for colors. So, you know, I'm putting all A's in, which is a lighter, you know, and you can see how the actual document looks with those changes. You're not changing the word file, the text file, but you're changing how it's rendering just to see how it would go and look. So keep this in mind, and we'll talk about it more in this this chapter. Right, so this is strong. These are all paragraph tags, and then we have the site at the bottom. I'm going to close this up right now. Right, we have the site at the bottom here. Where is it? Not exactly sure where the citation is being used, but then we have a site here, the most beautiful equation in math, and we have a header here, H1. This is going to be our that's our header over there. Then we have another paragraph tag, and then we have this code, which is gonna, you're actually able to go and put in a type of codes if you wanted to, in order to make it, if you want to use some type of math equation or whatever, or other elements. I don't use this too often, but you are able to use it. Again, you probably have to look up the actual code to do, and it will go in and show up there. But again, you have to have the code tags in order to go and use it. Another paragraph tag, and then we have over here in second, right at the very bottom, go to the very bottom, we have another H1 tag, right? And inside of that, we're going to have a list, an unordered list, and these are the different elements that are going to be inside of the list. So that's the end of this this section. We have the footer at the bottom. Obviously, the footer at the bottom is over here, and I realize that right now we don't have the, even though this does say a footer, and you notice the footer here is black along with some white over there, right? You might be wondering, why is it showing up that way, and that's what this chapter is going to go and deal with. We're going to learn more about CSS, which will bring me right now to the CSS, this actual PowerPoint slides. Give me a minute, and I don't know where they are. Hold on a second. Oh, there they are. All right, so let's begin talking about this the second chapter, getting started with CSS. And I'm just going to quickly go through this. I want to make sure that there's time. It's already, I can't lecture for 3 hours because just can't. I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk for 3 hours. So I'll do my best to go all through the slides. If you have questions, send me a note and I'll answer your questions. I mocked up some examples to do as well. So hopefully we be able to get to everything. So these are the objectives. We'll try to get to all the objectives that we're supposed to. They like to give you a view of what the actual page we're going to be going and dealing with. So this is the view they have. This is, we're going to be hitting all these elements as I go through the slides. So I'm not going to go through each specific one right now. They're kind of giving you a overall of how it's going to look. Introduction to CSS, appearance of the page. All right, so right now you've learned about tags, which is very important. You learned about so far about the paths as far as where the information is, the different doc types. So all those elements are very important. But they haven't talked about the actual style of a page, the colors, the way that it's formed, and all, that's very important. In the olden days, I say olden, like 15 years ago, not so old, but but a while ago, it wasn't so important how a page looks. But nowadays, it's everything. So a lot of focus is done on CSS, and it's extremely important to know how your page is going to render and how to make it as attractive or better yet, as user-friendly as possible. Most people strive to get a nice, clean-looking page. And that's where CSS comes in. And you could have sloppy CSS where the coding you make it is, the best thing is to make a CSS file where, let's say you wanted to change all the text color from black to blue. You should be able to make one modification, and then all the locations where you want to make that change will change from making one change in your CSS file. And as a quick example, even before I begin, let me show you a CSS file like the ones that they've been using up until now, just as a quick example. I'm taking this from the last homework assignment that we just had, and I'm going to put it inside of my Notepad++ here, and let me open it up just to show you briefly what a CSS page looks like. Open, and I'm putting in the path here. So this is a CSS file right here, right? And you see here some things you're already familiar with. You're already familiar with the word HTML. And guess what? If you change this HTML here to the background color, just real quick, I'm going to change the background color to black. Let's just say black. I'm saving my file, Control S, and I'm going to go to where it was rendered. I was using Chrome, right? Chrome here, right? And I'm going to refresh the page. Well, nothing happened. That wasn't a good example, because it's being overwritten by another part. But if no other CSS was here, then the background color would change to the entire background color of this document would change to black. So that's the power of CSS. The same way that you're familiar with the word body, right? This is how the CSS is for all the body. The different font sizes. This should work. If I change this, let's say to, I don't know, 4. Okay, I'm going to save it. I'm going to go back to here and I refresh this. It should be working. I don't know why this isn't working. It should. The font should have gotten small. I'm not sure why. Kind of curious myself why this is. Maybe because I have to change a paragraph tag. Is there a paragraph tag here? Hold on. Well, this is why. Because again, I didn't want to get too much into it. Depending on the type of media that you're using, it's going to take effect at different. If you're on like a mobile device versus the actual monitor itself, it's going to depend on the type of device you're using, where it affects the text. But in any case, it still holds true that you're familiar already with the word term body. I'm just going to change everything back so I don't wreck my. You're familiar with the term body. If you're familiar with most of these terms already, and so now let's jump article you're familiar with. So now let's jump into the CSS codes. So hold on. Okay, fine. So, okay, so the latest version of CSS language is CSS3, and it's built upon several modules. That each module is focused on a separate design topic. We're going to go through them as we go through them. And these are the types of style sheets. There's basically 5 different types, I think. Right? There's the browser styles. There's user-defined styles, external styles, embedded styles, and inline styles. What this means is the following. You could look at it as a hierarchy of styles. If you want to guarantee a change inside of your document that you're going to display, you're going to use what's called the inline style. The inline style, as the book will explain in a few minutes, and I'm going to go back to our text over here, right? An inline style would actually be a change inside of a link, inside of a tag itself. That is the most, I want to say, basic, a guaranteed way to change your text. In fact, if you're familiar with WordPress at all, and you make a change inside of a WordPress page, it usually changes it in line, in the actual document itself. That's a guarantee it's going to make the change. If there's no inline style, right? If you know inline style, it's going to go the next step up, which is an embedded style. Embedded style, again, I'm briefly talking about this, and once we get into the actual notes themselves, I'll talk about it more, hopefully give you an example as well. And an embedded style is within the document itself. I can make a change inside, I could put my style inside the document, and then that will affect that specific document, unless, of course, it hits an inline, which takes precedence over the embedded. And then the next step up with the external styles. Basically, an external style is a style that's created, but that's what these are. These CSS. These are styles that are made. That's like over here. These are styles that were created to go along with the page, and they will. If you don't have anything before this, if you don't have a inline or embedded, then what's going to take precedence is external. Then there's user-defined styles defined by user based on the configuration on the user's browser, similar to the external. And then if you don't have anything at all, it's going to default to the browser styles. Each browser has its own type of styles, and so on. Let's see. I just got the message. Hold on a second. So those are the orders of the different types of styles. And now we're going to go through each specific ones, right? So here they're, one second, let me go down here. All right. So the general syntax of a CSS style rule is, and we have the specific rule that we have might be an H1 tag, might be a title tag, might be body tag, and we have the property along with the value. This is a little bit vague. We'll get into more specifics. So in general, you have the selector, and in this case, the selector, let's go to the example over here. These are the selectors, right? You might have like I said here, like the body or the navigation. These are the selectors, right? This example is different. This is using an external one, right? But it doesn't have to be external. You can do it in your document itself. I didn't want to take the time to make an external one. That's a selector, and these are properties. Properties always have the word itself followed by a colon, followed by the specific parameters that it happens to be. And in this case, we have, let's say width, for example, is 100%, and it might have the background color might be white. And the font family, and this chapter, this section will deal with all these different types. So these are different selectors. And again, I'm not expecting you to memorize them all, but should be aware that they exist. Usually when I have to change something, I will go and search it up, or I'll use I would go and use the inspector to see what exists already. And I'll be able to take them there. Like font size, I could change it to 16. So maybe you have to put body. Okay. So the property and a specific value. And these are depending, they're almost always uniform, the changes between different browsers, but you also should be aware of what type of browser you're using, because sometimes, and Internet Explorer is notorious for this, they don't follow the real rules that were set by the standards. So sometimes you have to check to see which browser you're using, and we'll get into that, I don't think this section, but a section in the future. And depending on the specific browser, you might have to make additional alterations as well. And these are the different names of the different types of browsers. So, right, so embedded style sheets. So these are, they're inserted directly into each HTML file as metadata by adding the following elements. So we have the style and the specific rules, and the rules are whatever rules they happen to be. And we'll talk more. We'll see some more examples of that as these slides go on, where the style rules are the different rules embedded in the HTML document itself. And I was talking about the inline style. Let's see if I can get an inline style to work. All right, so let's go to my document here. I'm going to get rid of this one here. I'm just going to try to get an inline style. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to keep I'll keep the head there. And I'll do inside of my body text, let's say, here's my body text. I want, let's do this. I'm just copying this from my notes that I have before on the other screen. In our body, I have, over there, I have style, right? And I'm gonna put this in also, right? All right, so I'm big blue, and this is strong. So this is what I mean by inline is I'm actually changing the code inside of this paragraph tag over here. So let's try to run this and see what happens. All right, there we go. Well, that worked, that's good. And so this is inline. And obviously you could change it to anything else. There are a bunch of, well, I'll show you a lot of different colors that could be used. You could change this to red. You could change it to anything you want. You could change the font size to whatever font size you want. And we'll talk about more of these, the colors and the font size in a bit. I know that there are specific slides on them, and it's going to change. It's going to change accordingly. So that's what that is. That's an inline style. I already mentioned the concept of the precedence of styles, right? The more specific rule that has precedence over the more general rule. Specificity is an issue when two or more styles conflict with each other. What that means is as follows. Let me bring an example in over here. Let's say that my body, this is an external CSS file. I have a body tag over here, and everything inside the body should conform to these rules. The margins, the width, the minimum width, and so on. I know we haven't learned all these yet, but some of them are obvious, like the background color should be white, and the font family should be, so some of them are obvious, the font size. If I have something over here, if I have another, if let's say that I have something else over here, the background color is equal to, say, red, right? Red, right? So these are conflicting. We have this one and we have this one. So which one takes precedence over the other? It's going to be the latest one. The later one is going to be take precedence over the earlier one. So that's what that's referring to, right? So when there's two or more styles in conflict, you're going to have the later one take have precedence, right? The last one is precedence. Style inheritance. So what's style inheritance? Style inheritance is a process in which properties are passed from a parent element to its child element. So what does that mean? So that means that I could have the following. I'm going to go back to an example here. And again, this is all from the homework assignments. Just using these as an example. I'm going to, here, let's do, okay, an article. Okay, if I have an article tag, so anything inside of an article tag that has a P tag, if I would just do article, then all articles, everything inside of an article tags would have a font size of 0.85 em. Right? We'll talk about the font size later on, but as an example, in this case, everything inside of an article, if I didn't have the P here, or any of this other stuff, everything inside of this article would have that specific font style. By putting in a P, it's saying that the paragraph tag inside of the article tag should contain this information. Let's do another one here. Let's do here. Let's look at this one. Right, the H1 tag inside the article tag should contain this specific. The font size should be the size, and the margin should be this specific margin. Again, we'll talk about the specific elements later on, but that's what it means as far as going inheriting all the different types of styles. So here we have, right, for example, the following style rule sets the color of an article text to blue, and the rule is passed to any paragraph tag. So here in this case, all articles are going to be blue. All paragraphs are going to have that. If you want to put them inside of another tag, then you're specifying the specific one for that specific rule. All right. Then we're going to talk. Then here they talk about the browser developer tools. This is what I showed you already. They allow designers to view HTML code and CSS styles. They make it easier to locate the source of a style that has been applied to a specific page element, and they are different in each browser and are updated and improved to make sure they improve with each specific browser. So that was over here where I showed you that, if you're going to inspect an element here, right, and you're able to see the actual code with it. And for right now, we're just dealing with the elements and the styles themselves. We're not getting into the console, not getting into anything else, but just the actual elements itself, how we're going to go in and view them. So that's the tools, and they explain how to actually go about doing it, right? Oh, I thought they did. I think they do somewhere. They get now in the book. Oh, in the book it explains how they actually go and do it. I already showed you so, but the book also specifies how to open up that tool. So how do you write a style? And we could take a look again at this style at the very top. This is a real one taken from the homework assignment that you just did, right? We have over here, it's hard to see in this color. I could change my color if we wanted to, just to, I don't know, to get, it's hard. I know it's probably hard to see this purple, but is there a better one here? Let's see. That might be a little better to see. You can see that this is this corresponds. This character set is corresponding to this. We mentioned before the specific type of character set you're going to be using inside of your page, right? And then you have the comment at the very beginning, at the very top, and after that, you're going to put in the specific codes that you want to go and use. So in this case, right? Again, you have the HTML, you have the height, we have the color, the body, and all this information is going to correspond to the text itself that's going to go and be displayed. Once your pages get larger, chances are you're going to have more than one CSS file. This is even in the examples we saw, there are two different CSSs, two CSS files. So you're able to actually import for one CSS to another CSS. I actually made a note here to look into this. Is on page 97 of the textbook, and it gives an example of how to import more than one CSS file in order to go and to get that information for those different CSSs files. All right, let's talk for 2 minutes about color. Right, there's different color values that we're able to go and use. I actually brought in a quick. I have a made a note to myself here to show you this link over here, right? Built into the system itself, we have built into the CSS, you're able to use all these different color names. This is just a link. You can just look up CSS colors and you'll come up with the same link that I have. These are all the colors you're able to go and use by name, right? This is gray, this is green, this is green, yellow, indigo. You could actually use these names along with these names. If you don't want to use the name, you could use the hex, which is a code that has a hashtag beforehand followed by six different letters. This is the equivalent of this specific color. This is a name for it. This is the hex, or you could use the RGBIV, the code for it as well. And you could look online to convert from one to another. Or with HTML5, you're able to go and have another value as well, which I'll bring up in a minute, right? So these are the color values in which color is given by an exact numeric representation, or you could use the RGB, and that's intensity, the primary colors, and it's code for red, green, and blue, or hexadecimal, which is what I was showing you a moment ago. And this is the actual colors themselves. Again, as far as the way that I usually design pages, and most people do, is you could go online. Actually, you could see which colors, unless you're like one of my downfalls is actually designing pages as far as how the way that it looks, as far as making this as I don't know, easy on the eyes as possible. It's difficult to know. So I'll often go and use their websites available that will give you colors that work well together. So you could look that up. Maybe I'll post that as a discussion to see what research you could do on those type of pages. Once your colors work well together, you could utilize those colors inside of your page. This is the then there's this HSL color value, and it stands for the hue, saturation, and lightness. It's the tint of a color represented by the direction of a color wheel on a color wheel. The saturation measured from 0 to 100, how much of that specific color it's going to be, and the lightness measures the brightness of a color and ranges from 0 all the way up to 100. And so here's a nice little picture showing an example of that. And the opacity of a page defines how solid a color appears. So you can make stuff I was mentioning before. You're able to make different parts of a page like transparent. Also with images, you're able to make, if you're familiar with Photoshop or similar type of applications, that you could change the opacity to be more see-through, less of a number than or more towards 100, which is going to be greater, where it's not going to be see-through. A color's opacity is specified using the following properties. These are the properties you're able to go and use with it, where the opacity sets the opacity of the color ranging from 0, which is going to be transparent, all the way up to 1, which is going to be completely opaque, where it's not going to be able to see through it at all. So here is the CSS for defining defines the text and background color for each element on a web page. We have color and background color. So the color is going to make the color of the page itself, and of the text, and the background color is going to make the color of the background page, the background of how it's going to go and look. So I could pop this into the text document to take a look, but I'm not going to, because if I have time towards the end, I'll go and I'll play around with that. Okay, so employing progressive enhancement. Progressive enhancements is a technique of placing the code conforming to elder standards before the newer properties. Basically, you want to make sure that not all browsers are running CSS, HTML5 or CSS3. So you want to make sure that it's good to go with the latest technology, but keep in mind that you want to be able to have your web page be viewed on other web browsers as well. So so keep that in mind. So you might not always want to use the newest techniques, so you might want to go and utilize the older techniques as well. Contextual selectors, it specifies the context under which a particular page element is matched. we'll see an example in a moment. Context is based on the hierarchical structure of a document, which involves the relationship between a parent element and containing one or more child elements. So what does that mean? Let me go back to the example page that we have running, right? We have this, right? So that was this whole, here's an example, right? We have the H1, this is the hierarchy, right? The H1 tags inside of the article tags, we're going to have this specific font. This does not mean that the H2 tags inside of the article tag, only the H1 tags inside of this article tag. And you could have, it's not uncommon to have, I don't know, like 3 or 4 levels deep. I wonder if there's anyone here that has that many deep. But you see some, some basic examples, like in this aside here, we have the H1 tags inside of a side is going to have this font size, that specific size. And if I have time, I give you more examples. But you might have inside of the, I don't know, inside of an article, inside of a paragraph, inside of, or I might have inside of an article, inside of a, I don't know, an H1, and then, well, you wouldn't have a P inside of an H1. Inside of code, inside of, and then you might have a P paragraph inside of that. You might have a specific type for that element. So that's what this is dealing with. And here are just some selectors, right? Elements, an element, a parent, descendants. This means that all the childs associated with this parent are going to take on that specific property. To match any element, you want to use a wildcard selector, which is denoted by the asterisk, and that will go and set every single element within that one. And you have sibling selectors are used to select elements based on elements that are adjacent to them in the document hierarchy. And you can see the document. If you want to get a good look of the hierarchy, you could take a look over here back to where is it here? And let me go back, close this up. If I make this a little bigger here, you could see the styles. You could see the hierarchy at the very top here. You could see the hierarchy here, how each element is related to the other elements. It's worthwhile to play around with this just to see the different parts of the structure of your HTML page. Then we have the attribute selector. So what's an attribute selector? Selectors can also be defined based on attributes and attributes values within the element. And it's going to come, the two main ones that are used are the ID and the class. The ID is identifies specific elements within the document, and the class identifies a group of elements that share a similar characteristic or property. I don't think that our page has an example. Let me take a look here at the HTML for this to see if there's any classes here. All right, see, they don't have any classes here, but let's see if I could do a quick example. This is the, well, I don't want to mess up the code here, but you could put in a identifier like this inside of the paragraph tag. You could have the word class, right, is equal to, I don't know, my CSS1, and then it's class equals, not plus. This will be, I'm creating my own type, and this type is called my CSS1, and then then inside of my code over here, I would make a new class, which is by using a period and the word class, and then inside of there, I would go and put whatever I want. I can make it bold, I can make it a different color, I could do whatever I want inside of here, inside of that specific class, so I would have more control of it. So there's an ID and a class. An ID is used for one specific time, as opposed to a class that's going to be used for many different times inside of the specific document. So let's talk about fonts for a minute. Fonts are nowadays probably more than ever. There's a lot of free ones, and people like different types of fonts. That doesn't mean you should go font, heavy on your web page. You should try to stick within the same font type. But the typography is the art of the design and appearance of characters and letters on the page. Color and font are one of the few properties in the CSS family of typographical styles. And There are a lot of fonts available. Let me see if I could, let me just do a quick search here. This is always fun to see. Let's do a search for Google Fonts. Google Fonts, all right, Google Fonts. And these are all free fonts that you're able to, they could step you through how to install them on your system. I think the book actually talks about it as well. These are all free fonts that are available for you to use on your web page. And there's so much of them. I mean, there's so many of them, and then each one has its own, like you can make them italicized or bold or whatever you want to use. And sometimes it's difficult to know. It's like too many. I mean, it used to be that the browsers just had the built-in 8 fonts that you were able to go to use, or 12 fonts along with different sizes. Now there's just so many available. So, so choosing a font that the characters are based on fonts that define the style, and appearance of each character in the alphabet. That's what a font is. I know you know what a font is, right? The general structure of defining a font for any page element is, and we have the font family followed by the fonts. So inside of the document, let's go back here to document here and here. So let me see if they have a font. Let's do a quick search for the word font, right? Hold on a second. This one should have font. The font should be here. So here's the font family in this document. These are the fonts family, and it works in a hierarchy of, if this one's available, choose this one. If it's not, choose this one, and so on. If that one's not available, choose that one, all the way down. So eventually you get down to the very basic ones that are built into the browser. But if one's not available, then it's going to go to the ones after that. And that's the font family font. Where fonts is a common separated list, separated by commas, also known as the font stack. Choosing a font, a specific font identifies a name and based on a font definition file stored on the user's computer or accessible on the web. So you could either choose fonts that are on the, let's go work backwards, right? The browser has built-in fonts. The next step up is what the user might have on his computer, and the last step up would be what you could download them from the internet. And each one of those has pros and cons. The ones that are built into the browser are always available, but they might not be as nice or as pretty as you want them to be. As opposed to the other extreme, that you have to make sure if you're going to choose a font that's not on the computer and not on the browser, then that font's going to have to be downloaded as the page is loading, which takes a little bit of time, and you're going to have a page that doesn't look exactly right for a few moments until it all is downloaded. So the generic font describes a general appearance of the characters in the text, but does not specify a particular font definition. The supportive font groups, these are the ones that are all built into all computers. Here are some examples of fonts. Right, these are different web fonts, other examples that exist over there, right? Then we have the font face rule to access and load a web font, and I believe the book will go through specifically how to go and load these web fonts, but you could add them to your style sheet. Once a web font is defined using the font face rule, it's included in the font stack, and you're able to go and utilize it. Again, there might be issues if they don't have internet access. I don't know why they would be accessing the internet, your web page, if they don't have internet access, but it does take a bit of time to download those fonts. Here's an example of how it might be, right? You have the font, you have this font face, and then you have the specific name and the URL where it's located. These should be regular quotation marks, not this, not just because it's PowerPoint that's showing up like that. And then the URLs, and then it should download to the computer, right? Where the name is the font name and the URL is where it's located, and so on. Then once you have the font, you could do all this fun stuff with it. You could set the font size, right? You could do absolute units or relative units. Absolute units is a fixed size regardless of the output device. And that's where they might do, like in pixels, like you might do 12 px for 12 pixels, or 32, whatever it happens to be, as opposed to relative units, which is expressed relative, so it might be a percentage, like 12%, 50%, which would make it half the size of the default size of the font, the current font. That's how large it's going to go and display, right? That's what it's mentioning over here, right? It's so scaling fonts with EMS And REMS, their text is made scalable with all font sizes expressed relative to the default font size. The default font size is what the default page is, the font is on that specific page. The three relative measurements used is the percentage, EM, and REM. And they're going to go through each of those, I think, right? Here's the percentage, right? And here is an example of like point size, like 16 px. This is a specific size. And they also have some EM examples here as well. I saw them before right here. So you get used to whichever one you want. I think the EM one is the most precise one, but sometimes you want to use, like if you're dealing with a handheld device, you don't want to, you don't want to make something like 32 because it's gonna be too large. You might want to make a percentage of the default font size. Here are expressed in units with the keywords. You have small and medium and large and extra large. That's if you want to use the keywords to go into to change them. So in addition to font sizes, creators of web pages want to create the spacing and indenting of a page. So one of the ways you can do this is called kerning. It measures the amount of space between characters, while tracking measures the amount of space between words. Right, so you could change the kerning of a page, kerning of the characters, and you're able to also change the space between your words using tracking. And this is, it would be letter spacing and the value here, and word spacing, you would put the value over there, right? There is leading the measurement that measures the amount of space between lines, right? You could change that with this command, right? So we're going through all these different commands, and again, you could just look them up on the internet, but that's explaining all these different, now like font size makes more sense, and display block we haven't hit yet, but the font family and all these different, we're about to talk about padding. So all these different elements here are kind of self-explanatory, or you can look them up, and they're also trying to explain them here in the slides. We have the text indent. This text spacing can be controlled by setting the indentation for the first line of text by the text indentation. This is the command for that. And they're bringing an example of what I probably just showed you. Right, how it would actually look inside of the code. This would cover the H1 and the header, the H1 and H2. This is what they're going utilizing for that. And then you have the font style. There's different types of styles. If you want something to show up normal, you don't put anything, or you put the word normal, italic, or oblique. And then to change the weight of it, you could have weight as the different. You could have it bold, for example. The different types of weight. There's the book has all the list of the different ones that are available. And then you have here, you could also change the style of a font, right? We have underline, overline, or line through. If you enter like a cross out, you could change it to line through. So you have text, that's the decoration of a font. Or you could have text transform, and you could change it to the specific type. If you want everything to be capitalized, regardless of how it is, like in this case, right, where's our code right now? Here's our code, right? If I wanted everything to show up in uppercase, I could change the transform to uppercase or lowercase or whichever case I wanted to go and be, right? To display a font variant of the text, you could use font variant. You can make it either small caps or normal. Normal is the default for how it normally is going to appear in the browser. So then over here, oh, let's skip one. All right. Okay. Then you're also able to, let's see if there's some examples here in a text align. Hold on a second. Yeah, text align. We have center. You're able to, depending on the font, what you have on your document, you might want to align it right, align it left, or center the text. So that's where the text align comes in handy, right? To horizontally align the text, use the text align. To vertically align the text within each line, use the vertical align, and then the specific alignment where you can make it the middle, the bottom, baseline, and you have to experiment with these, and it does get a little bit tricky. So always I would always create a web page a little bit at a time to make sure that what you're creating will go and make it correct. That's going to show up correctly. And here is the aligning text horizontally and vertically. Here's a chart for all those bottom and sub. We talked about super. You're also able to put everything on one line. Some examples here are showing them on different lines, but here you could combine them all into one line. So you get the word font. Let's see if that exists here. I'll just word font. ONT font. It doesn't. All right, but you're able to, if you wanted to, combine all these the styles of the weight, the size, and the family all into one line by using one command, font, followed by the specific style that you want, the variant that you want, the weight, all in one line. That makes it a little bit easier to code, and I don't know, saves you a few lines of text on your style sheet. Here's an example. I might as well show you this. Right here we have, right, hold on. Right here we have the font. All right, messing everything up here. Here we have the color is going to be white. The color. Here we have the font, and we see it's going to be normal, small caps, bold, and the specific size, and the font type itself. So that's what that is. That's how they would utilize that. Okay, and I just lost my place. Give me a second here. Hold on. Sorry. All right. So here. Okay, so we're going to spend a few. We're getting towards the end here. We're getting towards lists, and lists we are able to make it's the browser style symbols displayed before each item in a list. We already talked about lists yet? Yeah. List will show a bunch of information, a lot of information, all in the same type. And if you want to change a style, you would do this command, list style type, and the specific type you want to go and change the style for. And then usually a list has before some type of marker. So if you want to change a type of marker, these are the built-in ones. You can change it to a bullet, a hollow bullet, a square, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, or the numbers with a leader on it, or the Roman numeral, or ABCs. These are different types of lists you're able to go and create. Again, the book has an example on it. I think one of the homework assignments has an example as well. You could also make a customized list if you wanted to, and you could set up a specific image for it, like they're setting up here this image for it. I find it extremely frustrating to go and do because you have to worry about spacing and you have to worry about a lot of different things. But if you wanted to make your own customized image for a list, you are able to go and do that. In addition, you're able to make a list marker position. CSS treats each list item as a block level. So everything within that block, you're able to go in and deal with. So the element placed within a virtual block in which a list a marker is placed outside the list. To change the default behavior, you would use the list style position. And this is the command you'd go in this, and the position would be either outside or inside of that position. There's the picture of an example of that. Then there's margins and padding. So is there a picture here? Here's a good example of a picture, right? We have the padding is between the words and the outside of the border. Here's the border, which is before the margin itself. So those are the different elements you're able to have of the box model itself. It shows you how the padding works, because you don't want like text right against the side or along with another box. So you would change either the padding or the border in order to go into to set it how you want. So setting the padding and spacing, you would have the word padding followed by the word size, where size is expressed in one of the units, either pixels or percentages, and you'll be able to go and change the padding in it. So here's an example, right? You might have here the list here inside of the nav, right, would contain this. The line height would be 2em, the line style type is none, and the padding to the left is going to be 5 pixels. So everything with this UL inside of this navigation tag will conform to this specific style. And to set the size of margins around the block level elements, you would have use the margin command, and you could, if you want to specify the top, you could use the word margin hyphen top, or you could use four of them together. Margin top, right, bottom, left. That's the order that's always in: top, right, bottom, left. So if I would have, for example, margin 10, 5, 10, 5, so the top would be 10, the right would be 5, bottom 10, left would be 5. So you could just throw in numbers over there if you wanted to. Okay, and this is an example. So then there's something called pseudo classes and pseudo elements. Pseudo classes classifies an element based on its current status, position, or use in the document. In other words, you're able to control each specific element utilizing this pseudo class. So structural pseudo classes classifies an element based on its location within the structure of the HTML document. And you could, for example, the root is a very one at the very beginning. You could have, let's see, only child. If you child meaning if you look at the hierarchy of the HTML code, you're able to specify or get the specific element you want utilizing one of these commands. And if I have time next time, it might be time today, I'll try to show you more examples on this. The book has a few examples on pseudo classes. This comes in also more when you're using JavaScript or jQuery in order to go and to change a specific element inside of the page. So dynamic pseudo class is a type of pseudo class in which the class can change the state based on the actions of the user, right? So if, for example, you click, I don't know, I'm sure you've noticed that when you click on a hyperlink, it changes from, let's say, blue to red or blue to green. That mean that you have visited it. So that those are pseudo classes that, based on what has happened, it's actually changing the display. And these are examples how you might have a link, for example, might have been visited, or it might be when you're hovering over a specific element, you'll have you'll see it might change from like blue to green, and utilize, this is the code that you would use. You would use the element and the pseudo element of how it would go and change. So pseudo element is an object that exists only in the rendering of the page itself. The pseudo elements can be selected using the following CSS selector: the specific element, and then the pseudo element that the element and the pseudo element that you're going to be changing. Where element is an element HTML file, and pseudo element is the name of the CSS element. And here's an example, right? For example, the either before or after, you're able to go in and use those. Finally, last couple slides here, right? Generating the content with CSS. New content can be added either before or after element using the following before and after pseudo elements. So before some code, before the actual elements, you would use the before, and after you would use the after, right? Here are some examples, the values that you might have associated with them. There's also different attributes. The content property can be used to insert an attribute value into a rendered page using the ATR function. So for example, you might have the content that you're using with a colon and then the attribute that you want to go and change it to. Last two slides here deal with inserting quotation marks. If you actually want to insert quotation marks, you want to use the block quote, and the Q elements are used for quoted material. Decorative opening and closing quotation marks can be inserted using the content property like this. And here's an example of how that might look. Well, it's a lot of information. The book covers all this in more detail as well, and some of the examples will go through and explain it also in more detail. I did make some more examples that I wanted to show you, but just because of time, and I'm sure that, again, this is a rather long class, a lot of lecturing. I don't want to go and take too much time, but I'll be happy to, maybe at the beginning of next class, bring in some examples. And if you have some questions on assignments, then you could let me know, and I'll try to either reference in the book or make up some of my own examples that I'm able to go and give you.